Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Welcome, everybody, to the second in our 10-part series on looking at how do we navigate, cope with the corporate world, and where do we find our ability to really find that inner resilience to be able to deal with issues that surround us in the workplace. I have with us again Kate Fitzsimons. We are in the second of our 10-part series. The first we did was looking at awareness. She has 3 R's, and so it's our response ability, right? Is that
that's it?
Is the first one. So we talked about that in relation to awareness, and today she's going to talk about the next 2 R's that she uses as a framework. So this is the framework that she uses to really hone in on what is it that we're responding to, and where do we find resilience within ourselves so we can really deal with issues. And our 10-part series, we're going to use these 3 all the way through. So, Kate, I'll let you get started with the second of our R's.
The second R. Well, thank you so much for joining us again for the next episode. As Lois mentioned, I'm kind of just walking you through the overall arching strategy, but I am excited then in future episodes to dive in to specific situations and the most kind of common challenges and uncertainties that we do face in the corporate world. But let's dive into what this second R is. And I am very passionate about this particular R because I feel like it's left out sometimes, but I think it's so important to do, and that is to reflect. So that's what that next R is. Reflect, most especially upon the impact of our thoughts and our thinking and our perspective. And I feel this step is so powerful because of 2 things. Firstly, our brain is a very good salesperson, and it really is very good at convincing us that our thoughts are true, that it is just the way it is. That person is just so annoying. My boss is just so difficult. This is just so unfair. This really shouldn't be happening, right? It's very good at arguing that because, to simplify it down, our brain, it likes to think in thought loops and the habitual patterns, right? So it wants to keep thinking the same way. It wants to keep proving a thought true so it can keep believing it. All right, so it's very good at, I like to say, arguing for our own misery. It doesn't know it's thinking a good or bad or happy or negative thought. It just wants to keep thinking the same way. And the next reason it's good to reflect upon our thoughts is because we are all very aware of what we think should be happening out there in the world, but we've got some very little awareness around who we're being in the world and what we're doing and how we're reacting and showing up and treating people, right? We're very good on being like, well, my colleagues should just be quieter, or my colleagues should be more cooperative, or we're very good at, pointing the finger and trying to control out there, but we're not paying much attention to, hang on a second, but how are we showing up? How are we treating them? How hard are we working? And all of that. So this step is about taking all the energy that we're wasting trying to control the uncontrollable outside of us and redirect it to the one place that we do have full control, and that is our internal world. That is where we have power, and that's what this second R is all about. Reflecting upon how we show up and what we do or don't do in reaction to a specific circumstance when we're feeling a particular way because of how we're thinking. Because the thing that I just wanted to kind of highlight to everyone, the truth is, like, as human beings, we often don't realize it, but we always do or don't do something based on how we feel in that moment. And I'll take you through a specific example of this shortly, but I really just want you to recognize, like, our actions are caused by how we feel in that moment. And those actions will ultimately go on to have an effect or create a result or create an overall experience of our life or of that specific situation. And so this R is really about reflecting on whether our actions and how we're showing up in relation to this specific circumstance or this specific person is creating more or less of the result or outcome that we ultimately do want in our lives or for our company or for our jobs. And I know it sounds simplistic, but it seriously is how the world works. There are circumstances outside of us which are going to trigger thoughts, which release a chemical vibration in our body called feelings. And then how we feel is then going to drive our action and our behavior, our tone of voice, our body language. And as a result of those actions, it creates a result. And that result will prove true your thinking because that is a driving force behind it. So that recognizing and reflecting upon that is so powerful because it gives you back control over, as I said, the one thing you have control over, and that's how you're thinking and showing up. So, for example, are you ready to dive into a specific
I'm ready.
example, Lois?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm ready.
So, let's do this. When you're feeling frustrated with your manager, let's say, because you're thinking, remember, you're not feeling frustrated because of your manager directly, or it's because you're thinking, she never gives me the recognition I deserve. Like, let's just say you handed in your 5th report and again, she's just like takes it off you and doesn't say great job or anything like that. And you're thinking, you make
Not
that
any
mean.
of the things she should say, in my opinion. Yeah?
Yes. Totally agree. But let's just see if reacting with negativity of thinking, well, she never gives me the recognition I deserve. Let's just play this through, Lois. If you're feeling frustrated because you're thinking she doesn't give me the recognition I deserve, are you more or less likely to act a bit short-tempered or have a more tense tone of voice in conversation to her or about her? Are you more or less likely to not listen quite as well, or to perhaps ruminate over the situation or turn to a colleague for a bit of a gossip session, a bit of a rant about how biased or unfair she is? Like, are we more or less likely to do that when we feel frustrated because we're thinking that way? Yeah, right? Okay. And then just think about it as a result of not being as productive with your time and being a little bit more tense in conversation with your manager, or when you're in a meeting with her or in that group situation. Do you think she's more or less likely to feel compelled to give you some sort of recognition for your work and your contribution, and you more or less likely to feel like connected to her and like a, like showing up as a kind of employee that you ultimately want to be?
Less. It is such a cycle, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, can you see how that thought of she never gives me recognition then causes us to feel and act in ways that actually brings more of that reality to life for us? And I love this step of recognizing and reflecting upon that, because that is why our thoughts begin to feel more and more true to us and more like, no, this is just the reality of the situation. Because subconsciously, when we're not paying attention and we're not aware, we are actually creating evidence for those thoughts. It's a bit of a mind trick when you think about it, but it's honestly the way that the world works.
It is so true. And it's also the hard reality of separating, like you said in the first session, truth, facts, from what we're simply, how we're responding, reacting, how we're thinking about it. Yeah. And so reflecting on that, you're right, is huge. It takes knowing we need to do it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But when you can kind of see like it's just not useful. Like, I love this step of like, so it's not saying, like you said, it would be great of a manager to actually take a moment to appreciate your work. And it's not saying that you don't take some sort of productive steps towards trying to solve for that. But the key word I just said is productive. And when you can see that frustration is a feeling that doesn't lead towards anything productive and is actually creating more results of you Well, firstly, you're showing up in a way that's less likely and less worthy of actually being recognized for your contribution. You are creating, as I said, am I creating more towards the problem or the solution? And frustration, it's an emotion that shuts us down. We want to stick our head in the sand. I always like to think of not emotions as positive or negatives, but emotions that either open us up and make us curious and some sort of productive and creative, or emotions that shut us down, right? And close us off from a situation and shut off our ability to access our wisdom and our problem solving skills and all of that. And frustration is one of those emotions. So in response to that, like the key is like if you recognize, oh, I'm feeling frustrated because I'm thinking this, like she doesn't give me enough praise. And then when I think and feel this way, I'm actually creating more reasons for her not to, to like proving her true that I am an employee. Like it's just not useful for me to focus on. And so I love to say, like, we are never reacting to the world outside of us. We are reacting to our own ants, our own negative thoughts about it. And once you can recognize, reflect upon that and see, okay, brain, I can see that you have all the reasons and all the evidence into the world about how annoying that boss is and how she doesn't give me all of that. I get it. I hear you. But I can just see it's just not useful for me to keep focusing on these thoughts and keep believing these thoughts, right? Because a thought itself is harmless. It's our own attachment to a thought and believing and going down that rabbit hole with it, which is ultimately what then, we can kind of catch ourselves at a feeling before we react to it and take action on it, but we need to take that moment to reflect on it. And so that's why this step is so powerful, of just realizing, okay, it may be true, but the number one question I love to ask myself is, do I show up in a way that I'm proud of when I'm thinking and feeling this way?
I think that is such a huge question, because it's, what am I proud of, right? It's what I own responsibility for. And it's also a sense of self-respect.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be proud of ourselves, which is respectful. And I think so many times when I've gone into reaction because, I've just been so upset, or, something seems so unfair, I tend to become like that ostrich, just like you said. My head goes into the sand and you don't see
As we all do. Yeah.
anything else. It's like, don't confuse me with any facts. I have made up my mind. My head is down and I'm not going to budge. And you're not proud of yourself. You don't feel good about yourself.
And I think that's such a powerful lesson for your podcast, in the sense of we speak about legacy. And I think about legacy not just when I'm going to leave this earth, but when I'm going to leave even an interaction with that person. I leave them with a part of me. They have a legacy. They have an interaction that's going to leave an impact. That's to me what legacy is about. And so if I was to, I'm always trying to leave people better than what I found them, or at least not hurt them, And so I think it's that, am I proud of this? If this is how I'm going to be remembered, am I proud of this for, what I'm contributing and things like that? And so I think that's a suitable question too, for that idea of legacy that you're so passionate about, as I am myself. And it was a big wake up call for me when I wrote my sister's funeral speech, even like asking myself, in the big picture of my life and not just in the here and now, because it is day by day in those little interactions, we are building a legacy. We think it doesn't matter in that moment, but they build upon and they build upon, and there's going to continue to be more resentment and disconnection between you and your boss if you keep choosing to look at her this way and keep having what I call like a manual, an expectation of how she should be. I like to say, stop shooting all over your life. So, but there's a lot to think about with that question and legacy, which is why I love it so much.
Am I proud of how I'm showing up? That is such a beautiful question.
Yeah. So let's kind of finish off the R's. Do you want to kind of dive back into that?
Let's do that.
Okay.
I love your R's. Okay, so the first one again, let's repeat it so everybody is well aware.
So we want to, firstly, when we have that temptation to lose our mind at someone or something else, hit that internal pause button. And the first R is to recognize your own thoughts and how they're really the cause of how you feel. And we do that, separate out the facts. Everything left over is your thinking, and that's causing how you're feeling. once you've recognized that and taken power back over it, we want to reflect upon the impact of those thoughts. And we do that by asking yourself, how do I show up? What do I do or not do when I'm thinking and feeling this way? And then look at the impact of that. And then just ask yourself, I ask myself 2 questions. Do I take any sort of productive action, like when I do this, when I'm feeling this way? And am I proud of the person I'm showing up as? So as we just mentioned. And if not, now know this is when you have that choice, which is really my mantra. We don't have my response is my choice. My response is my choice. I'm always repeating that. My response is my choice. And the way that we change then the impact of it for the better is to redirect our thinking. And I like to say this is like a parent-toddler relationship of like you've got the toddler that always wants to run around. We kind of just have to manage that. We can't totally control it. We can't totally control our brain. We're constantly having to manage a toddler. We all have a little toddler in our brain which likes instant gratification, which likes to focus on the negatives, like on the here and now. And we have to kind of manage that. Like it's going to have a tantrum sometimes. I sometimes say I'm taking my toddler to the gym. I'm taking my toddler here. Like it doesn't want to, but we have, like I said, a higher, more logical, purposeful part of our brain that can continue to manage the toddler. So for any parents out there, you'll know it's exhausting sometimes, but it's still always possible. And it's a daily practice. So so the best way I've found, and we will dive into, as I said, specific situations, because I know sometimes when you do like this overarching stuff, it still doesn't quite click. But as we dive into specific scenarios, I'm excited for what your audience might take away from it. But the best way I've found to break through what I call CNN in our brain, which is constant negative news, the constant like spiraling around, is and all those ants, as I said, those automatic negative thoughts, which are quick and all over the place like ants are in real life, is to ask ourselves powerful questions. Because I'm not about trying to get ourselves thinking positively, but powerfully and productively. And the best way that we can do this, because sometimes it's like, well, I don't even know how to think better about this situation. What do you mean? Is it like, but the way we do that is through asking questions, because questions direct our brain back towards what we want it to focus on in that moment. Because the good news is our brain, as I said, it's a problem-solving machine, which means it loves to answer questions. But think about the questions we're asking ourselves when something isn't going our way. Why is my life so hard? Why is this so unfair? Why does no one care about what I'm doing? Of course, that's going to go tell your brain to find some very self-defeating thoughts and leave us digging further into the ditch. But the good news is we can flip the power of those questions and ask ourselves better questions, empowering questions, questions that are deliberately written in a way or, put together in a way that makes us step back and see the big picture and be more open-minded and search for the value in the situation, which doesn't mean it's always going to feel good, but I choose to believe that there is a lesson, something of value in every experience. Every experience might not be a good one, but there's something good that can come from every experience if you choose to search for the value for it. And questions can help us do that, powerful questions. So we're going to walk you through a whole range of them in coming episodes, but some of my favorite, these are my top ones that I love to ask myself that can apply to different scenarios is, first of all, what can I learn from this? What's one thing I can learn from this to help my life or the life of someone else? So I love that little extension because it gets us thinking beyond ourselves, and that is something that really helps us find meaning during really challenging, uncertain times when we realize it's not just about us, but it's actually could be about someone else. It also helps us meet a basic human need of contribution and feeling a sense of connection and belonging during tough times. So that was a question that definitely saved my life, focusing on finding the answer to, rather than arguing, why did this have to happen, but how could I help stop this from happening to someone else? I know, of course, I felt grief when I lost my sister, but alongside that grief, I partnered it up with courage and meaning and compassion and love. And that's what gave me the strength and resilience to go through and create a charity in her honor and help people in her honor, because I was focused on, rather than trying to solve the problem of how can I turn back time, which I had no power over. I focused on how can I change the future because of what I'm learning from this. And that is the ability and that we all have the power to do. So that question I love, what can I learn from this? What is one thing that I can learn from this to benefit my life or the life of someone else? And I want to teach you all a mind hack as well. If your brain tells you, I don't know, tell it to take a guess. Yeah, but if you did know, what would you guess it would be? Because a guess, our brain sometimes shut down in fear of like being wrong or being judged. But if we say take a guess by definition is there's no right or wrong answer to it. It's just a guess. So the pressure's taken off and it opens your brain back up to be more creative and stay open. So I love that. How can I turn this setback into a comeback? That's one of my favorite questions because it's future focused and action oriented. Because our brains love to be past focused. But as I've said, 5 minutes or 5 years ago, we can't change it, guys. And with only so much mental energy in a day, it doesn't make sense to focus on what you can't control. But the future is within your control based on what you choose to focus on now. And this question immediately kind of sets up your brain to go, okay, we agree it's a setback right now. We agree that wasn't a great review, or we agree that this was a challenging time. But how can we turn this around? If you give your brain, if you ask yourself that every single day for a month, I'm telling you, it's amazing what comes to you. Like even over this last few weeks in my personal business, I've lost a lot of income. I've lost a lot of gigs as a speaker because I can't be in connection with people with the coronavirus. I've told my brain, no, I'm going to get my business through the other side. This is going to be a great comeback. And I've already come up with some great ideas for webinars and coaching. And my creativity sparked because I'm focused on finding an answer to a useful question. So that's the second one. And my third one, which I love to ask myself because it takes a bigger perspective and reminds us to step back and see the big picture and not get too caught up in the weeds of here and now, is simply asking myself, like, how will I think about this in 5 years' time? Like, I really love to ask my future self who's gotten through the other side of this or is in 5 years from now and think, hey, how worried are you about this in 5 years? Like, are you stressed about this at all? Is it even a big deal? And just kind of tap into her wisdom of the future and the big picture can sometimes help you breathe a little easier. And I'm borrowing her wisdom right now through the coronavirus too, of like, hey, you're not even worried about this. In fact, I'm almost at a point now where I'm looking back grateful for what I learned from that challenging time, because you learned how to figure out some stuff that you wouldn't have otherwise figured out if you didn't have to go through this. So chill, you've got this. I feel like, 5 years from now, a lot of us and a great way to look at that is think about yourself 5 years ago.
Right.
And what you would tell yourself 5 years ago, which felt like such a big deal. You thought the world was ending because you were dumped by that person or your boss laid you off a job. But now you can see, well, I never would have gotten to this job where I've learned so much or met this person or, found my true passion. Like, you hear so many people say they were laid off during the recession, so they had to dig deep. They had to figure out how to start a company or something. I was listening to a podcast the other day where now that company is worth over $100 million because he started doing LinkedIn ads because he didn't have anything else to do and he thought this might be interesting. And now he's got this whole company, which is worth, millions of dollars. If he hadn't been laid off his job, that wouldn't have happened. But you know why he created that and why he was able to create that is because he asked himself, okay, how can I get through this? What can I do? What job could I do? He was asking himself useful, powerful questions to tell your brain to go and solve. Our brain, most powerful muscle machine thing that we have in this planet, but we have to put it to work to solve useful, helpful, empowering problems. That's what I have to say for this. So redirecting your brain there, as I said, it's not a one shop. You do it, you ask your brain once and it's going to immediately have a great answer or immediately help you feel better or, create an amazing result. It is a daily practice, day in, day out. Redirecting. Your brain's going to be like the toddler. It's going to run to the candy. It's going to think it's good to go and eat 12 blocks of chocolate. And we need to remind it, hey, we understand we want to do that. There is that temptation. Keep redirecting. It's what it's going to do, but we don't have to freak out about that. We just have to recognize, reflect upon it, and then keep redirecting it. And I like to say as well, it's very easy to understand this intellectually, what I'm teaching, but the power and the change comes through the practice of it. So I could read a book about playing soccer. It doesn't mean that when I go out on the field, I'm going to be good at kicking the ball. We all know that, right? We accept that it's through the practice of showing up for training and putting in the work, you'll get better at learning how to, score a goal. It's the same thing with this work. So many people go, yeah, I get it. But you just don't understand, but have you actually got out in the field that we have of life and put this into practice? And when you feel the temptation to want to snap back at your boss or a colleague, pause for a second and realize I'm not frustrated because of them. It's because and just think this through. And little by little, day by day, you do begin to recognize what used to send you off the rails a bit. You're suddenly pausing for a second. And then maybe, you can kind of catch yourself quicker and quicker, or little by little this changes, because our brain is just like every other muscle. It changes through repetition. And the more that we practice this stuff, the better we get at it. And you'll get better at handling situations rather than situations always having you. So that's what these 3 R's of response ability are all about.
So one of the fun things that we're going to do is we're going to use these 3 R's now, and as we look at how do we deal with different situations, like the difficult boss.
The poor bosses out there, they're getting a bit of a hard time, aren't they?
They get a hard time, but there's a lot of things that we deal with. And so by doing that, the fun thing is we will all get a chance to practice how to go about doing this. And then, Kate, we will have a worksheet for people that they can download on this. So you have a way of reminding yourself of this process so you begin to practice it. Make it a daily habit. And, right?
Yes.
Make it a daily habit.
I do actually have, so I'll give you this, it's a little poster, A4 sheet, of the 3 R's, just recognize, reflect, redirect, and then the 3 powerful questions that I've just talked you through. It's put together in a neat little worksheet that you can definitely just have on your desk, especially if you're listening to this in current times where, the pandemic's still hanging around and there's a lot of uncertainty and your brain's going to want to solve for something it can't control. Having this directly visually in front of you, every time your eyes look at that, it's firing a neural pathway in your brain and it's redirecting it towards what is useful and helpful to focus on. So I recommend and highly encourage you guys to do this. I really wish the hardest part about this muscle, our brain, is, so many of us can take a selfie and see the visual changes of our body when we go and lift weights and repeat that, or go run and repeat, and you can see the visual change. The hardest part about this work is we can't see the visual change in our brains. And so we get so deflated, we're like, oh, it's not working. But I want to set a 30-day challenge for you guys to, the next time before you respond to that email, especially as now a lot of this is probably virtual, before you get on that Zoom call and you feel frustrated and you're going to show up at the meeting huffy and puffy or in that victim mode, have those 3 R's in front of you and just have some fun. Just practice it. Even if your brain can't really wrap your mind around it in that moment, just show yourself how your thinking is optional. And there's always another way you could look at something if you choose to.
I have a vision listening to you with my 3 R's, right? What did you say? How am I reacting? Let me see. My powerful question right now is, and I think
I hope I have people right around this world walking themselves through it, and just a happier, more productive, more connected workplace because of it. Even if you can't physically be in each other's, I'm always reminding myself, be kind whenever possible. It's always possible. I love that, reminding myself it is always possible to be kind and to be patient. And I think I want to leave everyone with this, but I'm always reminding myself, be the change you want to see in the world. If you want your boss to be more patient, more kind, you want your colleagues to understand you better, be the one who understands. Be the one who's patient. I'm telling you, that's how we change our workplaces, our world, and most especially ourselves. We be the change. So, yeah.
We be the change. That is so true. On that note, we will end this session. We can't wait to come back next week and talk a little bit about how we're going to use these.
Let's do we'll start with the difficult bosses. We'll get that one done. I know everyone wants to hear that one.
Start with the difficult bosses. So we'll see you very shortly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, send us your email with requesting the sheet that Kate has put together. We'll make sure you get it. If you have questions, let us know, and we will respond to those as well. Thank you so much for being with us. Kate, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.